This video is brought to you by Sailrite. This video will show you how to install a U-zipper, or sometimes called a smile or frown zipper opening, in a vinyl window enclosure panel. The design of this zipper opening will include a roll-up screen to help keep the insects out of your enclosure. All the steps required to install the U-shaped zipper opening with a roll-up screen in your vinyl window curtain will be shown. This type of opening can be rather confusing as many steps are required and each task must be done in a specific order. This video will take the guesswork away. This video is a small excerpt taken from the Enclosure DVD. The Enclosure DVD will soon be available from Sailrite at the end of 2012. A detailed material list will be found at the end of this video. With the window panel installed on your boat, go to your boat and take some measurements to indicate where you want the zipper opening to be installed. It's a good idea to use a yardstick and be sure that the zipper opening is horizontal with the rest of the boat from afar. The location of your zipper opening is totally dependent upon what you think looks best and what will work for your application. We've positioned a ruler at the bottom indicating where we want the zipper to come across at the bottom and also on the side, and we're measuring from the corner 4 inches out. Taking measurements like this will ensure that we have a curve that's easy to sew and consistent. Now measure up from that corner 8 inches and place a mark, and then draw a line up, and then measure out 8 inches along the horizontal area and place a mark and draw a line out. The line that we drew out should be about 12 inches in length. It'll be extended later on. We want our zipper opening to be centered between this panel. That's for our particular application. Yours may be different. So we're measuring the sides to ensure that the opening is centered. Then we're placing those 2 rulers at the corner again at that same location on the opposite side. To create the curve at this side, we'll measure from the corner 4 inches up and 8 inches on each side, and we'll mark the glass. We're using a Sharpie marker here to mark the vinyl window material. These marks will be hidden in a later step. We've determined that we want our zipper to extend approximately 4 inches from the upper zipper, so we're marking it 4 inches, and we'll extend that line to that 4-inch mark. We'll measure that side, and then we'll place that same length line on the opposite side of the window. So the top edge of our window opening will be horizontal with the bottom opening. When creating the curve for your zipper, it's a good idea not to make a really sharp curve. It's more difficult to get the zipper to lay flat, so we recommend doing a similar curve as you've seen in this video. This window opening with screen will require 3 runs of a 3/4 inch bias binding. We're going to use a sunbrella binding here, and we're going to use the 3/8 inch basting tape for canvas and apply it to the back side of all of the binding strips. We'll peel off the transfer paper, revealing the glue, and then we'll place this binding on the inside edge of the line we struck down on the vinyl window material. You will notice that we are about an 1/8 inch away from that line. This is important, so be sure you're approximately an 1/8 inch away from the line. Here we get to the curve, and we start making that turn to the mark we made that was 4 inches from the corner. The double-sided tape helps to hold the binding in place so that when we take it over to the sewing machine, it does not move on us. And again, we'll stay an 1/8 inch away from this line along the horizontal edge of our curtain panel. When we get to the other side, we'll cut it right along the top of that line. This will later on be finished with a 2-inch facing going along the top. Now we'll place the second row of binding along the opposite side of the line.
It should end up with a 1/4 of an inch between. I could show that too, couldn't I?
Yep.
Have a 1/4 of an inch.
The nice thing about the double-sided tape is that if you don't like it, you can rebaste it. The 3/4 inch bias binding does stretch fairly nicely so that you can make a nice curve with it. And here we are coming to the other end, and we'll cut it right along that top, matching the opposite side. Now we'll place a 3rd row of bias binding along the outside edge.
You want to leave just a very little, thumbnail thickness. That way when they're cutting through the glass, they're not going to cut the edge of their binding.
This third outer strip of binding is very close to that center strip, but not directly on top, so there's enough room to cut it with scissors later on. Here's Deb with a little tip on how to stretch the bias binding.
Hold the outer edge of your binding at this edge and actually tug on it as you're applying it to your glass. And that will actually help by stretching this outer edge here so that you don't have as much to work in on the inner edge of the curve and have more problems than this right here.
You would only do that at the curve.
It seems to work a lot better.
We'll take it over to the Sailrite Ultrafeed LSC sewing machine. Later on we're going to show sewing with the LS1 sewing machine, but right now the LSC.
Move it to the right.
We're going to sew the inside binding only, and we're going to sew that outside edge of the inside binding only. We are using the roping zipper foot left. That's really not necessary. You could do this with a standard foot, but Deb had that already installed on the machine. We will not sew any of the other bindings nor any of the other edges at this time. When you get to the corner, take your time, go slow, and as you can see, scroll the material up to get it underneath the arm of the sewing machine. The slower you go, the more accurate your stitches will be, and keep them very close to that outside edge of this binding. You'll see that when Deb gets to the corner, she scrolls the material to get it underneath the arm of the sewing machine, and then she slows down. We will not show this whole process. You would obviously sew to the end of the binding. Let's move on. We'll now baste the first of 2 zippers. Now that we have that first stitch done on the binding, we're going to flip the panel over, so we're working on the inside surface. Deb's just running the zipper along the binding to determine what length she should cut it. She's going to cut it a little bit extra long here because you don't want to be too short. Now we're going to apply a 1/4 inch basting tape for canvas. This is a 1/4 inch to this coil zipper. The YKK coil zipper goes around curves better than a YKK Vislon zipper. We've put the basting tape on the 2 edges of the zipper flange, keeping it away from the teeth as much as possible. That's why we use the 1/4 inch size for zippers. Deb has started to peel off the transfer paper, revealing the glue, but she hasn't taken it off all the way. She's going to baste the inside edge first, so she's going to leave the transfer paper on the other side until she's done basting the inside edge. Then she'll go to that next. You'll notice she's running it right along the edge of that binding on the opposite side of the vinyl window material. So she's matching up this inside edge so that it's flush with the edge of the binding underneath.
Because the outer edge needs to be stretched just like we did on the binding. So we're going to put that down and stretch it around the curve, and then we'll come back and stick down the inner edge. Okay, and we just kind of pull on the teeth and drop it down. So, and we're going to be lining it up still with this inner edge of the binding. We're going to be sticking down this edge here. We want to kind of hold it, stretch this. And again, you want to pull on this outer edge here.
The outside edge has to stretch, the inside edge has to shrink, so she's applying extra force on the outside edge to stretch it.
We're almost to our end of our curve.
Okay, now that that outside edge is applied, we're going to go back and we're going to apply the inside edge of the zipper flange.
Yeah, hold it down when I'm stretching it that much. Okay, so. And again, I'm going to push and stick, push, stick, push, stick, going back, doing that, back and forth, until we work this out of it.
Because this side has to shrink, we're going to work out as many wrinkles as possible. You won't get all the wrinkles out, but you can definitely distribute them more evenly along the curve.
You can lift it up if you find out that you need to move it just a hair one way or the other. Okay, so if you see some of this, now that the inner edge is down, we can you keep working that. If you want to move some out a little bit, try to get all those bumps out. Okay, so now once that's down, you can see there's kind of a bulge here. Just pick that up, lay it back down. Smooth. That's what we like. And that's why we use a narrower binding or tape.
We are not going to show the opposite or the second curve. Here we are at the end, and you can see we cut our zipper longer than it need be, so we're going to trim it to size so that it's flush with the end of the binding on the opposite side of the vinyl window material.
Okay.
Now that it's basted down, we're going to take it to the sewing
We're
machine.
showing only this inner curve right now.
This Ultrafeed LSC sewing machine has the roping zipper foot left installed, and she has the needle bar all the way to the left. It is not necessary to have the roping zipper foot left for this application.
Okay, now, as you
Because the
move
zipper
this
has to
curve,
take a sharp curve, sometimes it will not stick down with the double-sided tape, so before you sew through the wrinkles, be sure the wrinkles are distributed neatly. Take your time here. Work out as many wrinkles as possible, then continue to sew. It is not uncommon for the basting tape to not hold with this portion of the zipper, so reapply it as discussed earlier. It's still important to use the basting tape because without it, it probably won't work at all. Alright, we're going to move on here and skip the second curve again because the concept is exactly the same. And here we are coming to the end. There's no need to reverse because a 2-inch facing will go along the top. It's now time to apply the screen. We're going to flip the panel so the outside surface is facing up. Deb's going to peel the middle bias binding away, leaving the double-sided tape on the vinyl window material.
So we're going to take this center binding off and we're going to leave the seam stick.
You may be going, huh? But it makes sense after you see what we're going to do. And we're also going to use that binding again, so don't throw it away. We'll need to reapply basting tape to it and reapply it on top of the mesh. We're going to be using a Fifertex mesh. This is a vinyl-coated mesh product. This is good for mosquitoes. If you want to use a material that's good for no-seams, then choose the fiberglass mesh, available from Sailrite. Deb is ensuring that the mesh is going down flat and that the basting tape is holding it in place.
So
She has placed some white fabric underneath so she can see where to cut the mesh
we're
material.
going to use the inside edge of the outer binding.
We're going to use scissors here, and we're going to cut along that inside edge of the outer binding to cut the mesh to size.
Just to get this out of the way. And then we're going to run right along the edge of that binding.
Don't cut too close to the binding because this will be covered with the binding in the next step, and if you cut too close you will see the edge of the mesh material poking out from underneath the binding that we'll install next. Go around the entire perimeter. Along the top edge we're going to use a yardstick just to ensure that we're cutting as straight as possible. No need to be completely accurate because a 2-inch facing will cover this area. Now find that binding that we removed earlier and apply the 3/8 inch basting tape for canvas to the back side of it again. You'll notice that the bias binding has a natural curve. We want to follow that natural curve as we apply it to the mesh. We'll reapply it right next to that outer binding so that it's very close, just a little bit away, not right on top, because we are going to slit it with scissors later on.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to sew the two inner edges.
Again, we have the roping zipper foot left installed. There's no reason for that. A standard foot would be perfect. In fact, it would actually feed better. We're sewing the two inner edges of the binding only. Do not sew the outer edges of these two bindings. This is the outside surface facing up. Here we are coming to the end. No need to reverse because we will have that 2-inch facing covering this area. Now do the same thing on that opposite binding. Here we are at the end. No need to reverse. We're now ready to apply the second zipper, and we're going to apply the 1/4 inch basting tape for canvas to both sides of this zipper, as we did previously. We're going to peel off the transfer paper, revealing the glue, and we're going to baste it in place. Watch how Deb does this next. As Deb gets to the corner, she is being careful to keep the outside zipper flange to match up with that binding on the underside of the vinyl window material. Nice thing about the double-sided tape is if you don't like it, you can peel it up again and reapply it. Take your time at the corners. Deb has stuck the entire outside perimeter of the zipper flange down to the vinyl window material. Now she's going to concentrate on the inside flange of that second zipper. So now she'll apply that down next. The inside edge has to shrink, so there'll always be wrinkles there. Distribute the wrinkles as evenly as possible. Don't leave big wrinkles because it doesn't look as good. Just spread them out along the entire curve edge and it'll look good. So again, take your time. Even after basting this, you'll take it over to the sewing machine and it will come up a little bit because the zipper has to shrink so much here. So even though you may take all the time in the world to baste this down appropriately now, it may move when you take it to the sewing machine, and that's quite normal. We still recommend that you take your time making it look as best as possible before taking it to the sewing machine. Make any adjustments you want here to get that zipper to lay down as nicely and as smoothly as possible. Alright, we're ready to sew this zipper in place. Now we're going to take it to the Ultrafeed LSD sewing machine, and we definitely need the roping zipper foot left for this. The standard foot will not fit between these two zippers, so if you don't have a roping zipper foot left, you'll need to get one. Or if you use the Ultrafeed LS1 sewing machine, you will have no issue at all. That's because the Ultrafeed LS1 foot is smaller than the Ultrafeed LSZ foot. We're going to switch now to the Ultrafeed LS1 sewing machine. This is a straight stitch only sewing machine. We want to show you that smaller foot when we sew the opposite side of the zipper flange. This smaller foot would enable you to sew between the two zippers, as the LSZ requires the roping zipper foot left to do that. The outer flange is easier to sew because the zipper lays flatter because it has to stretch and not shrink. So you can sew this with a little bit more speed. But you can see that smaller foot design of the LS1. You'll also notice we got a skip stitch. We're using the Helios thread, much like the Tanara thread. And the Tanara and Helios threads are more difficult to sew, and you can expect skip stitches approximately every 10 foot or so. Alright, the hard part's done. Here's what it looks like on the outside surface with the two bindings. Now all we need to do is put a facing along the top, and before we do that we need to slit the glass and install the sliders.
We decided we're going to cut on that line. That way it's got a little bit of glass going under the teeth.
Use a sharp object like an awl or a nail or anything you want to punch through the vinyl window material. Do not punch through the mesh material, just the vinyl. We're going to cut right on top of that line that we drew earlier on the fabric using a pair of shears. Need to separate the zipper teeth and then insert the shears through the hole you made and carefully slit it, being sure not to cut the mesh material on the underside. Alright, we'll go all the way to the other side. We'll not show that. And here you can see it separated, and notice we did not cut the mesh. Perfect.
Screen's not cut.
We've chosen to use a single pull slider, and all we need to do is start the fat end of the slider on the end of the zipper. This may look rather easy, but it can be a little bit difficult. We've just put a lot of them on. That's all there is to installing the slider. Now we're also going to run a slider along the other side as well. So Deb's going to stop here, push this back to the center, and she will install a slider on that end as well. And here's what it looks like when you unzip it. Then you can roll up that vinyl window material. Notice there's binding on that side as well. Nice. Now we'll separate the teeth on the other side, and then we're going to flip the panel over, and we're going to cut the vinyl window material there as well. Same procedure.
And see, on the other side it just goes right through the glass.
I apologize for all the noise in the background. It is business as usual here at Sailrite.
There's no screen in the way. You got your zipper open. Just kind of guide your blade.
Okay, for some reason we forgot to video the portion of putting the slides on this zipper. Do not forget to put the slides on before you put the facing on. So we didn't video it, but you need to do that just as we did previously. We'll be using a 2-inch prefabricated sunbrella facing, and we're going to apply the 3/8" basting tape to both long edges. We're going to use the Sailrite edge hot knife to seal the ends to keep it from unraveling. Peel off the transfer paper, revealing the glue, and then we're going to baste it right along the edge of the outer zipper with the zipper teeth centered someplace into this facing. And then we'll be sewing this on. This gives it a nice finished look, and we'll put that on both this outside surface and also on the inside surface. Here at the end, we'll trim it to size, and we're going to use that hot knife to prevent it from unraveling because we are not going to create a fold here. Now we're going to find the center position, and we are going to put a webbing strap here that will be used to hold the rolled up window up. You could use the vinyl window material as a strap instead. If you use the vinyl window material, you do not need to use a hot knife to cut it because it does not unravel. We're going to just tuck it underneath that 2-inch facing, slightly by a ½ inch or so, and then we're going to turn it over, and we're going to apply the 2-inch facing to this side as well, doing that same procedure. We'll flip the panel over so that we're working on the inside surface, and we're going to use a webbing strap for, again, another roll-up strip that will hold the mesh material. Again, you could use the vinyl window material as a strap, which would not require a hot knife, and you could use that in the same way that you're using this webbing. Deb's placed a little bit of a double-sided tape on the webbing there to hold it in place, and she's going to open up the window and place it right underneath that other strip, about a ½ inch in. The double-sided tape will hold it in place so we can take it to the sewing machine and sew it without it moving. The length of the webbing is too long, but it better be long than short. We'll actually cut it to size once we determine where the snap will be positioned. We're going to use the Sailrite LS1 sewing machine and sew a straight stitch, reversing at the top of the zipper just to secure that down well. And we'll sew along the length of this 2-inch facing right along the edge. When we get to the strap, we'll do a little bit of reversing here just to secure that strap in place and continue to sew all the way to the other end, reversing at the beginning and the end and also over the zipper teeth. And now we'll sew along the top portion of the 2-inch sunbrella facing. In any of these applications, you can use a vinyl facing like stamoid, and you can also use a vinyl 3/4 inch binding like stamoid as well in lieu of sunbrella. The only thing left is to install the snap fasteners in our roll-up strap.
So we're going to mark where we want our snaps at here.
We'll have a strap that rolls up on the inside and a strap that rolls up and snaps on the outside, so we're positioning snaps directly on top of each other and marking it with the soapstone pencil. We're going to use the 1/8 inch hole punch, and we're going to place that premium cutting block on the back side to prevent damage to the hole cutter, and we're going to use a heavy mallet to punch holes through the facing and the vinyl window material. We're going to use the Snap Fastener Deluxe Installation tool. We're going to place the eyelet on the bottom of the tool, the anvil portion. Then we're going to place the stud on the top. And we're going to use the tool and punch it with a hammer to roll the barrel neatly in the stud. Now we'll do that same procedure, yet reversing the panel around so we can install the stud facing this outside surface. This is the outside surface. Place the eyelet on the anvil, slide it in position, push it through the hole, put the stud on top, give it a blow with a hammer, and we have one stud on the outside surface and one stud on the inside surface. Doesn't matter if the stud's on the top on one side and on the bottom on the other. Doesn't really matter there. Now unzip and roll up the vinyl window material, and we're going to determine what length we want the roll-up strap to be.
Up. And then rolling the window up, we're going to keep this rolled up in the window. So, okay, we have a screen there. And what we want to do here, bring our strap up Probably about there, you think?
The length of the
Socket
webbing
button
strap
on this
or
side.
vinyl strap
And
is totally dependent upon how tight you
Take
want
that
the window
webbing
rolled.
off.
There's no hard fast rule on
So what we
this.
need to find out is where the button's got to be, and the button needs to be on this side, so we know it's got to be down.
Deb's going to
Here.
use the press and snap tool to install the button and the socket. She's folded the webbing so that there's 2 layers. That helps to
Button on the
reinforce the
opposite
area
side.
that the snap will
Just
be
gonna go
installed.
ahead and center
All that
it.
needs to be done is to center the snap and then to press the lever.
Webbing piece.
This tool will
Squeeze.
incorporate a hole and
Piece.
press the snap in place all at the same time.
But-
There it is.
Okay. Now, we'll zip our window back shut.
Now we'll follow that similar procedure to install
screen.
a snap in the screen portion of our window.
And roll this up. Our webbing out this time. Roll the window and screen all together, like so. Okay, now I'm going to flip it toward me. Okay. This webbing, with both the screen and window, will attach
We'll determine
back
the appropriate
here.
length and then install a snap in exactly the same way
Squeeze.
we did previously.
Snap it.
You're done. Now all we need to do is install this side curtain to our boat, and we'll show you how the curved zipper in a vinyl window with a roll-up screen works. Deb's rolling up the entire window here. This includes the vinyl window and also the screen that we installed. Rolls it up, and then she'll snap it on the outside with that strap that we created. Now she'll unzip the vinyl window material and she'll unzip the screen so she has plenty of room to roll up the vinyl window material that's very close to our frame structure of the enclosure. Once the vinyl window is rolled up, then she'll re-zip the screen portion of our curtain.
Top.
Now the bugs cannot enter, but yet the air can come through to provide ventilation. As promised, here's the materials list. You may want to pause the video to study these 2 lists. The average cost for a U-zipper with a screen like this is around $52 for the materials. Be sure to check out Sailrite's other videos at the Sailrite website or subscribe to the Sailrite YouTube channel today. This has been a small excerpt from the Enclosure DVD that's coming soon to Sailrite in 2012. I'm Eric Grant with Sailrite. Thanks for watching this video. Bye-bye. It's your loyal patronage to Sailrite that makes these free videos possible. Thanks for your support.